It happened on the kind of rainy morning that made the world feel heavier than usual. Gray clouds hung low over the city skyline, pressing down like a weight Emily Stanton couldn't shake. The hospital corridor stretched before her, silent except for the faint squeak of her wheelchair wheels, an echo of everything she had lost. 6 months ago, Emily wasn't sitting in that chair. She was soaring, the youngest principal dancer in the New York Academy's history, her name whispered in the same breath as legends. Her life was light, rhythm, and applause. Then came the night that rewrote her story. A performance cancelled because of rain. A ride home she almost didn't take. Headlights slicing through the storm, a flash of panic, a scream, then nothing. When she woke up, her body was still, her legs unresponsive. The doctors called it permanent spinal trauma. Emily called it the death of herself. The world praised her courage, but behind the smiles was silence. Behind the words, "You're so strong," was a girl who couldn't bear to look in the mirror. Her father, Charles Stanton, billionaire, fixer, conqueror, could buy her comfort, but not freedom. No amount of money could rebuild her body, and no amount of love could mend her spirit. That he would try everything, until one final, desperate choice took them both far from the noise of the city, to a place called Healing Storms, and there, in the quiet arms of the mountains, Emily would meet a stranger who would teach her the greatest truth of all, that sometimes, healing begins not when you learn to walk again, but when you remember how to feel. The retreat looked nothing like a hospital. Nestled among tall pines and whispering winds, Healing Storms felt alive, wooden cabins glowing with soft light, trails that wound past streams and wildflowers. But to Emily, it was just another stop on her father's endless list of miracle cures. Charles Stanton stood behind her wheelchair, his face carved with exhaustion and guilt. For all his wealth and power, he looked old, small, and utterly lost. He had conquered industries, changed economies, yet couldn't change this. "I'll be nearby if you need anything," he said softly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She nodded without looking up. She didn't need comfort. She needed silence. Days blurred. Therapy sessions, polite smiles, the mechanical, "How are you feeling today, Emily?" that she never answered. Nights were worse, the sound of rain tapping the cabin roof like a heartbeat she couldn't escape. She missed the stage lights, the music, the feeling of movement. Now her world was still, and stillness felt like punishment. Then, on the third day, someone, changed everything. Emily sat by the porch, sketching trees she didn't care about, when a small voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you the sad lady my dad told me about?" She turned, startled. A boy stood there, no older than 6, freckles splashed across his cheeks like constellations. He held a small wooden toy car and looked at her wheelchair with curiosity, not pity. "My dad says sad people just need different help," he said matter-of-factly. "He helps people. He helped me when Mommy went to heaven." Emily's throat tightened. "Who's your dad?" He pointed toward a greenhouse near the edge of the property, where a man was tending to rows of plants. His shirt was damp with soil, his hands rough, but his movements were steady and peaceful. When he noticed them, he smiled, not out of sympathy, but recognition, as if he already understood her pain. That night, she couldn't sleep. The boy's words looped in her mind. "He helped me." The next morning, the man approached her quietly. He didn't ask questions. He didn't introduce himself with credentials or titles. Instead, he knelt and placed a wildflower on the table beside her sketchbook. "You don't have to smile," he said. "But maybe this will make today 1% better." Then he walked away. His name was Adam Miller, a widowed father and former physical therapist who had left everything behind after his wife's death. Now, he and his son lived simply among the mountains, volunteering at the retreat. Unlike the other therapists, Adam didn't treat her like a case file. He didn't measure progress in sessions or steps. Instead, he listened, really listened. He talked to her about the sound of rain, the way grief changes shape but never disappears, and how sometimes healing starts when you stop fighting your pain. At first, Emily resisted. She met his calm with sarcasm, his kindness with walls. But Adam never pushed. He simply stayed, nearby, quiet, patient. And over time, the silence between them began to feel safe. He invited her to help his son plant flowers near the greenhouse. At first, she refused. But one afternoon, when the boy asked if she could help him pick colors that looked happy, she found herself wheeling closer. Her hands touched soil for the first time in months. The earth was cool and alive, and when Adam smiled at her from across the garden, she realized she had just laughed. One morning, as dawn spilled gold across the fields, Adam said softly, "I think your body's waiting on your heart, and your heart's waiting on permission to believe again." That sentence stayed with her. So when he asked her to try something new, she agreed. Adam didn't take her to a gym. Instead, he led her into a cabin he'd transformed overnight. Mirrors lined the walls. Soft ballet music floated through the air. The scent of lilacs, her favorite, filled the room. "I'm not asking you to dance," he said. "I'm asking you to remember what dancing felt like." He played a piece from Swan Lake. Emily closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she let herself remember movement, the stretch of muscle, the whisper of silk, the power of flight, and then, slowly, she felt something stir, not in her legs, but in her soul. Days turned into weeks. Each session was agony, physically and emotionally, but it was hers. Adam didn't push her to walk. He asked her to feel. And one morning, when he stood beside her, hand hovering gently near her back, he whispered, "Let's try." Her legs trembled. Her hands shook. But they didn't give out. She stood, for 3 seconds, then collapsed into his arms, laughing through tears. When Charles found out, he was furious, and terrified. "You had no right to experiment on her," he shouted at Adam. Adam met his gaze calmly. "I didn't experiment. I believed." That broke something inside Charles. For years he had fought battles with contracts and currency, but never with faith. And for the first time, he realized, his daughter didn't need a savior. She needed someone who saw her as whole. Under Adam's care, progress came slowly, a step forward, 2 steps back, tears, pain, and quiet victories. But she wasn't alone anymore. Adam's son became her friend, Charles began to visit without talking about doctors, and Emily began to live. Then came the day, the sun dipped low, casting gold over the mountain fields. Adam stood nearby, his son laughing in the distance. Charles watched, trembling, as Emily shifted her weight, gripped the rails, and took her first 5 unassisted steps. Each one was shaky, uneven, but utterly her own. She reached Adam, who simply smiled, not proud, not surprised, just quietly grateful. Charles wept openly. And for the first time, Emily didn't cry out of grief or pain. She cried because she believed again. If this story touched your heart, please don't leave without sharing it, because somewhere out there, someone's still waiting for their second chance, and maybe you can be the one who reminds them to believe again. Sparkling Heart Echo Tales, where true stories heal.